Hey everyone, it's Spicy Sushi. So this is a video I was wanting to make for quite a while because I've been saying I would make it, but I have had a lot of setbacks. But I am feeling way better physically and mentally. And so this is mainly just I've just been having so much fun with my build, and I've been having so much fun streaming that I've been really unfortunately putting off making YouTube. But I do have some very important videos planned regarding Harvest. I do have a one mirror from Harvest challenge that I'm going to be doing in about a week. So you can check that out on Twitch TV for that. But I am going to come out with a few guides that are going to lead into my One Mirror from Harvest challenge. And this is going to be guide number 1, how to find your bases. Now, this is the exact process that I am going to take before I go into this challenge. And so I wanted to share like the process that goes with this. Now, this tab is the remains of the bases that I used for the first 2 weeks in order to make about 3 or so mirrors from Harvest, which funded like my Mage Blood, Squire, like this whole build right here. And yeah, and so this is the remains of 2 weeks ago. Now, a lot of these are probably still very good, but I am going to have to do some research to refresh and to relearn what is still good to make in this meta. And I decided to go with you about how we do that. Now, Harvest is incredibly difficult to master. It is easy to get into, but it has an exceptionally high learning curve, which we're going to go over in this video. The most basic way to jump into Harvest is to craft clusters with reforges and to use the other crafts in Harvest, such as like fossil exchanges, currency exchanges, like changing breachstones, like Eshes to Chayulas, changing dense fossils to perfect fossils, low tier essences to higher cost essences like Deafening Spite and the like, and then as well as crafting just clusters, because clusters are very basic crafts, such as this lightning cluster. It's just a lightning more common on a lightning large cluster with 8 passives. And but you may know, if you do this method, is that it is pretty RNG dependent. All crafting is RNG dependent, but some clusters are incredibly hard to hit good mods, and it's incredible. And if you only rely on clusters, you are going to have a lot of frustrations with Harvest. But part 1 of this video is going to cover how to find clusters, because clusters are still a sizable chunk of the profit. But then we're going to move into part 2, which is the very difficult side of Harvest. This is where the gap of a 1 to 5 exalts per hour profit margin in Harvest turns into up to 15 to 20 or even higher exalts per hour profit. And that is through items. Making items are always going to be the highest profit in the game if there is a reforge that goes well with an item, such as, fire reforge more common onto apothecary hunter gloves, for example, to make righteous fire gloves for righteous fire players. They love to have just fire multi, max life, resistances, chaos res, stuff like that. And those sell for incredible margins. I saw a few the other day that sold for even up to 20 exalts. And that's going to be part 2, how we find those, which it is very difficult, but part 1 is a very easy way. And so let's move into how we research clusters. Now, this is the website that I use. I've gone over it multiple times on stream, multiple videos, usually at the end of a video. So this video is more so just dedicated to this. PoE Ninja. It is the greatest source of information for finding your bases, and it should be, if you're a harvest farmer, you are very familiar with this. Now, when you arrive here, just make sure your league is on Scourge, and we are on builds. You're not on economy, you move to builds, and then we move down to here, the passives. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but you can also do cluster passives. And this is immediately going to show you the distribution of cluster notable passives. Now, this is, a decent way to find your clusters, but this is where like kind of the knowledge side of it comes. If you know what build is really meta right now, if we go to like week 1 of the league, it was very obvious what was meta. Everyone was playing like Champion Toxic Rain, Raider Toxic Rain, Trap Saboteur, Seismic Trap, stuff like that. Cold Snap Occultist, Death Aura Occultist, and then Minions as always. But let's see week 1. This is exactly what I did. I would go down to clusters right here. I see a lot of Unholy Grace. Now, Unholy Grace, if you see, gives increased chaos damage and increased attack and cast speed. Now, this very obviously looks like something a Toxic Rain player would use. Again, this is where knowledge of the game comes in, and that is where I can kind of grasp that chaos damage goes well with Toxic Rain, and attack speed goes well with Toxic Rain as well. And so if we filter that, we can see the other notables that these players like to use. See, it's already grabbed Champion and Raider, which were the most popular Toxic Rain players. So if we click on Champion here, or we click on Raider here, for example, looks like Wicked Paw and Touch of Cruelty is also a pretty good one there, but also Unwaveringly Evil. So let's say we grab these. We go to one of these players. See, all of these players here now that we filtered, they are all using this large cluster. Let's go ahead and click on one. And we have here a 8 passive, increased chaos damage, and here are the 3 notables. Now this was an extreme profit margin for the first couple of days in the league. It was week 1. And let's see, let's grab Wicked Paw, Unholy Grace, Unwaveringly Evil. Unholy Grace, Unwaveringly Evil. Now, what you can see here, if we go to Craft of Exile, and we pulled up this large cluster, which I think I showed you, we do so just by going to Cluster Jewels, type Chaos, base large cluster jewel, and then we can see Unwaveringly Evil, Wicked Paw, Unholy Grace. This is a Chaos tagged jewel. And so you can already see that this is a chaos more common. But if you also notice, Unholy Grace is one of the most common notables that these players use. And Unholy Grace is a attack, caster, and speed. So you could actually have been, and if you also notice, this is one of the only attack and caster mods on the entire cluster. And so if you reforged attack or caster or speed, you would very often hit Unholy Grace, and it was not hard to hit a decent 2 prefixes outside of that. And that is one of the best clusters that I did week 1. Let's see. Let's go to Raider. Let's go back to clusters. Let's see Repeater and Shrieking Bolts. Now, Repeater and Shrieking Bolts, these are medium notables. Obviously, I already know this, and you may not know this already, but it just takes a little bit of investigation. You can go here. Where's the Repeater and Shrieking Bolts? Oh, they're right here on this projectile cluster. Now, if we go here, and you want to know what tags do those share? So let's go ahead and go to Cluster Jewels again. Let's go to Projectile Damage again. Go to Projectile, right there, Repeater, and Shrieking Bolts. Now, Shrieking Bolts is untagged. If you see an untagged mod, there is a heavy chance that this will be a very valuable, not very valuable, but have a decent profit margin because it's not a guarantee as super easy to hit. Now, Repeater is easy because it is a caster tag, and it is the only caster tag on this entire medium cluster. So it's actually quite good to use caster on these mediums, and you could also use speed, but you would be hitting these 2 notables more often. This is a very high weight though, and so you will see this quite often as well. But it's also, if you notice, the only attack tag in this entire mod pool right here. And so this tells you that if I used attack more common, I will hit it pretty often, right? So let's say we go up to PoE trade. Let's find this cluster, Repeater. Now this was a week 1 meta, extremely meta, and so things are always going to be different now. But let's type in Repeater and Shrieking Bolts. Let's add 4 to 5 passives. Add 4 to 5 passives. Boom. And let's look it up. Now, 25 to 34 chaos. Now, these were about 35, 40. This is about the same price margin that they were week 1. Now, the difference is week 1, exalts were much higher or much lower. So this was actually like 1/3 of an exalt, or over 1/3 of an exalt week 1. And so this was extremely good. The base, you can just find by typing in added small passive skills. Scroll down here, type in projectile damage, boom. And then for Craft of Exile, you would look at item levels. So if you're only wanting to hit Shrieking Bolts, you could actually cut off. This is a very important lesson. You can cut off follow through and aerodynamics by simply not buying this item level. You could only buy up to item level 67, and you would target these mods much more often. Now, this should be very useful to you next league, and I hope you keep that in mind because Toxic Rain is always going to be a very popular build. It just always will be unless it's incredibly nerfed. So our maximum item level, we can go down here, 67. And so we search, and our base is only 1 chaos. So for 1 chaos, you can buy a 48 item level. You will target these mods incredibly often. Let's say we drop our item level to 67, and look at that. Now let's say, obviously Harvest is not very good. What did I say? Craft of Exile is not very good at targeting Harvest. It stopped doing it recently, but let's just throw like a caster on here. fossil, and it will kind of give us an idea. 1 in 22, so that's quite nice. And then, oh, well, it's 10 times, my bad. So let's do speed. Obviously, you're going to hit this incredibly often. Speed, there we go. Okay. Well, it'll hit these. You don't do speed on this. Anyway, fossils are really confusing to do this with, but basically caster more common is an attack more common will be your best friends for this. So let's see. Attack, but lowers caster. It's not going to show us. It's like a 1 in, it's probably like a 1 in 10 or something basically. Or even maybe 1 in 5 to 1 in 10 to hit this combo right here. But anyway, very, very solid. So that took a lot longer than I meant it to. But anyway, that's clusters. Clusters are very easy, and that is how I research my clusters. Now, the hard part is items, like I said. You have to have a lot of knowledge, and this is why the gap is so big in Harvest. But I will go ahead and give you that, how I kind of go through that. Let's go to, I'll just do a fresh research right now, something I haven't even looked at yet. So if we go to the distribution of specs, we can look at Occultist is at 16%. Now, I do know that Occultist is a very, there's a lot of build diversity with Occultist right now. There's an incredible amount right now. And so it is going to have a large share just based on that. And maybe I shouldn't use it as, a great example right now. But anyway, let's go through here and let's see Cyclone. Now, Cyclone, this is most likely just cast on crit. And so if we click on Cyclone, we can go ahead and see our cast on crit players. We're looking at Shockwave, Anomalous Ice Spear, Shockwave. Now, I haven't seen this build at all, so I'm pretty interested in this actually. Let's go ahead and just click on a random Shockwave player. Okay, so we're looking at something I have never seen this build ever, but let's go ahead and look at their gear. Now, they're using a lot of rares. And if I look at this, I'm not seeing really anything that stands out to me as unique to this build. And besides this cluster, so this cluster could give you an idea. You can take this into Craft of Exile, look up the notables, look up maybe some common tags among them, and then put it in the Craft of Exile, go to PoE trade, see if it's good. But anyway, we're not going to look at this guy anymore because he uses so many unique items. So let's go to like Ice Spear. Let's see what Ice Spear users play. Okay, so we have a Headhunter and double elevated boots. This is a pretty high-end one. Let's go ahead and cut off Headhunter because I know what item I do like to craft for CoC players. So let's just cut off Headhunter. Let's go down here. Okay, here we go. This is the crystal belt that I was going to talk about. You notice here, a lot of these CoC players, they use a Crusader crystal belt and higher investment Shaper Crusader. Now, if we look at this, we see Energy Shield, cooldown recovery, and a lot of 2 ES mods actually, flat ES, percent ES, and CDR. Now, this is where Harvest gets pretty difficult because you wonder, CDR, well, let's go ahead and put this item into Craft of Exile, right? Let's go ahead and reset this. Let's go to jewelry. Let's go to belts. And let's choose crystal belt or item. Let's do crystal belt. And let's go ahead and go Crusader. Now, if we notice, the max ES and the percent ES from Crusader are both defense tags. So you can hit this quite often with defense reforges, but the problem is these builds, they really need CDR on their crystal belt because they are a cast on crit build. And so if you look here, CDR is not tagged. And this is where things get interesting. So let's take it into the emulator. Let's go ahead and create a crystal belt. Grab it here, Crusader Influence, and let's put it in. Now let's go ahead and hit it with some Harvest Defense More Common. And let's see if we can hit some. Okay, so we've hit percent max ES already and flat ES. Now, obviously, we did not hit CDR because that is very hard to hit because it's not tagged. But this is where the Harvest More Likely Reforge comes in, the most broken craft in Harvest. So let's go down here. And what you can do is you can actually, since CDR is native to this item, we can go to our bench and we can craft cooldown recovery rate on here. And then we simply go to other, Reforge More Likely. And it's going to take this crafted mod and actually add it to the item as a mod. And it will very often actually keep these mods, but since they're more likely to remain. So you can obviously get unlucky. It is a 100% more multiplier on keeping the same affix, but obviously 100% more is not going to save them all the time, if often, depending on how many tiers the affix has. The more tiers it has, the more likely it is to remain. So if we more likely it again, we've hit tier 1 recovery, percent ES, and T10 flat. And so if you would probably, like what I would do is I usually hit it more often until I can hit something impressive that would sell. T1 flat, T3 increase, and T2 cooldown recovery rate. This would be probably good enough to sell because the base is very cheap. A lot of money from Harvest comes from just mass producing honestly garbage, but this would be pretty good. We have T2 strength. The build is kind of strength starved. We have T2 cooldown recovery rate, flat ES, not great, but decent, and increased ES. Now, you would always want to catalyst this before you start crafting on it. You would use a tempering catalyst, maximum, and we're sitting at pretty decent energy shield now. It actually has an open suffix. What is someone messaging me over and over? But anyway, you could craft some res on that. So let's go ahead and look up how much this belt would actually go for. So let's put a crystal belt. Let's put cooldown recovery. Increase cooldown recovery rate. Now on our item that we made, we have 15%. Our total maximum energy shield is, it can be 80, so it can be 120 actually, I think. Or we'll just put 111 or 110, and then we can add on some maximum energy shield, increase max ES, and also I don't want to go too far, but we can add some strength, and we can add some elemental resistance, total elemental resistance. No, this is not. This is not. I think this may be it. Let's take that off for now. And we are looking at a 5 exalt belt. Without resistance. Now, with the resistance added, we can look at 6 exalts plus even, and the base is only the cost of a Crusader orb, because you always want to make your own bases, guys. You never want to not make your own bases. So 74 chaos for the Crusader, and then you would want I believe an 86 item level crystal belt. If we go back to the calculator, 80 for the highest maximum energy shield, 82 for the highest increased, and then the cooldown recovery, 84. So all you really need is 84 item level. Let's look at 84, just regular crystal belt. 2 chaos, or around 2 chaos. Our orb was 74, so it's 76 chaos to make the belt, and that was 6 exalts profit right there. And that's just one item, and that is how I go through and research most of them. So yeah, guys, I hope that helps you out, and I will see you in the next one.